about 100 people sign up for today's Zoom. So I'm just gonna wait a couple of minutes and give people time to get in the room and get settled, and then we'll get started. But welcome. We're excited to see you and excited to share this wonderful information about this new grant with you today. All right, so welcome to Artsfield's twice monthly calls. It's great to see everyone. For those of you who are new, we welcome you. For those who are returning, it's great to see you again. We miss being able to gather around in person, but we hope and keep our fingers crossed that we'll be able to do that soon. Artsfield is a local arts organization. It was established as a United Arts Fund. And our mission is to build community through the arts. And we do that by doing things like these Zoom meetings. We do leadership programs. We do field trips for children in Hamilton County schools to be able to attend arts experiences and arts performances. We also raise money and give it to arts organizations and artists. And we're going to be talking about some of that today. Just want to remind you that Artsfield and Arts Forward have partnered, and we're on board with the Arts Vote Early and Vote Early CHA campaigns. We're encouraging the arts community to get out on October 27th and vote early. It's a nonpartisan campaign. We don't care who you vote for. We just want to make sure that arts folks show up in force, vote early, and make sure that our voices are heard. I would also like to remind you that, as I said, Artsfield, we raise money and give it to the arts. We're in the midst of our annual campaign for 2020, in the last quarter of it. If you would like to support what we're doing and help us to continue to offer this type of programming, as well as support organizations and artists throughout Hamilton County, we would love to have you contribute. Just $5 a month, $60 a year helps us to do the things that we do and to put our mission into action throughout the region. And I'm gonna ask if Catherine, who's our development director, will put the link to donate in the chat. So if you want to help us out, grab that link and make a donation today or whenever you can. So today you're here to learn about the Artist Work Grants. And Artsfield is excited to partner with the City of Chattanooga government, Southeast Development District, as well as the Lyndhurst, Benwood, and Footprint Foundations to be able to offer this program to Chattanooga and to Hamilton County. It's a wonderful thing that we expect to give the arts community an opportunity to produce, create, and exhibit amazing works of art in Chattanooga's wonderful public spaces. And we're excited to be part of this. We kind of, as we worked on it and thought about it, thought back to the WPA era and how government and foundations and people of means really put their funds together to infuse the arts with the resources that were needed and to support artists as they went through the Depression. So we see this program as something akin to that, to support the arts and arts community locally as we go through the COVID-19 pandemic. So today we have two guests with us who are going to talk to you about this new project. We have Kat Wright, who is the interim public art director for the city of Chattanooga in the office of Mayor Andy Burke. And we also have Miriam Manda, who's the manager of grant making and community engagement at Artsfield. At the end, we'll have some updates and announcements. We do ask that you please mute your mics. We have a large number of people on today, and that you also note your questions, and at the end of Kat and Miriam's presentation, they will entertain any questions that you have about this grant. So I am going to stop sharing my slides and mute myself and turn it over to Kat and Miriam.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for making space for me and Artsfield and all the wonderful contributors to this Artist Work Grant Program. As James said, it's been something that we've been cooking for a while in light of COVID-19, and certainly I don't think any of us anticipated the pandemic to continue to linger and impact us all as it has. So we hope that this will be an inspiring initiative to infuse not only our local economy with some funds, but also generate some artworks that can inspire hope and healing down the road. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All righty. So essentially, we are looking at the Artist Work Grant Program is going to provide project funding.
Wait, hold on, Kat. I don't think your screen sharing with us.
Am I not there? Let's see. Now are we there?
Yep.
Are we good now? Perfect, thank you. So the project funding for the Artist Work Grant Program, it's important to know that it will help individual artists, arts organizations. They don't necessarily need to be all nonprofit, which is something that I want to clarify on this screen right here, that you can be a nonprofit organization or you can be just a group. But the fund is essentially going to provide much needed work for everyone in the wake of COVID-19. And then, as I mentioned, infuse the creative economy with various project related purchases tied to the creation, installation, and documentation of artworks. So the grant eligibility must be in the Thrive region. What is the Thrive region? The Thrive region is essentially the 16 counties in Tennessee, which includes Bloodstow, Bradley, Hamilton, McMinn, Marion, Meigs, Polk, Ray, and Sequatchie. And then in Georgia, Catoosa, Dade, Murray, Walker, and Whitfield. And then lastly in Alabama, DeKalb and Jackson. So if you are an individual artist, an art studio organization within the Thrive region, you are welcome to apply for a grant. It should be noted, however, that your particular projects must be located in Chattanooga city limits. So that's a very important note there. As you can see by the screen, you've got some basic, again, as I mentioned, 501c3 status is not required, although arts organizations must partner with a lead organization. If you are a group or organization that is applying for a project, you do need to be able to show on your application, which we'll get into specifics here momentarily, about project funding or in-kind donated services that the group or art studio is lending on behalf to the project. Types of artworks may include, but are not limited to, both temporary and permanent artworks in our exhibitions. I want to talk briefly about what constitutes permanent and what constitutes temporary artworks as it relates to this grant program. So temporary artworks would be anything in terms of, say, performance, visual art, that you're looking at I would say about 6 months or less. If it's a permanent exhibition, or it would be a year or more. Now, this is notwithstanding public art. Public art would be classified as something that is actually built, and that would be classified as a temporary exhibit for 2 years, would be temporary, and then permanent would actually be for the life of the work. So there's a little bit of difference there between built public art and then the rest of these particular artworks that you see there. It is important to note that the performances must adhere to current CDC guidelines regarding the safety and gathering as it relates to the spread of COVID-19. I do want to say that, again, a lot of times different municipalities, counties have different regulations, executive orders regarding what is permissible in your county. But again, as these performances, artworks, these projects will actually be cited in Chattanooga, you will need to adhere to the guidelines that Chattanooga has in place for exhibitions and artworks and permanent art. I do want to say that you cannot have large-scale performances of 50 or more attendees for events, and it also is important to know that if you're looking to do an exhibition, either temporary or permanent, which would be up to 1 year for permanent, you can't necessarily have existing artwork. The goal of the program is to generate new artworks, new contributions to the local economy, to make those particular artworks. Grant categories. You have your artwork projects that will be administered by Artspill. Those typically are the temporary and permanent exhibitions and performances that I alluded to earlier. They're only eligible to receive up to $25,000. They don't necessarily have a required lifespan as it relates to permanent and temporary. I want to clear that up, as in you can do a performance for, say, 1 day, and it doesn't necessarily need to go beyond that. So we say there's really no required lifespan, but I definitely, out of respect to some of the other mediums, want to remind you of sort of the parameters we put around temporary and permanent exhibitions. With public art projects, those will be sort of more in Public Art Chattanooga, my vein, which again are physical built artworks only. They're going to have for permanent, they're going to have a lifespan of 1 year or more. And for a temporary project, permanent public art project, that will be 2 years or more. I mean, there's a gray area there. It kind of depends on what actually is the public art project. Certain public art projects have different lifespans attributed to them. One of the things that you need to know, I think specifically when you're thinking about what grant you're going to apply for, is that there is a time component in which the projects have to be completed. The temporary projects need to be completed within 6 months of receiving funds, whereas permanent projects need to be completed within 1 year of receiving funds. I will say, for those of you that do public art interventions quite a bit, you're very much aware of the time component in terms of fabricating, permitting, installing, insuring, that year really starts to creep up on you when you're looking at projects when it relates to something more permanent in public art. So please be mindful of the fact that your temporary projects should be completed within 6 months of receiving funds, and then your permanent projects will be completed within 1 year of receiving funds. Eligible expenses. Again, this is to generate economic action to Thrive region artists, nonprofits, fabricators, the whole lot. We want definitely this to impact larger than just the artist that's awarded the grant. So as you can see, you have sort of an overview of eligible expenses that will be covered through the grant. Arts organization fees, liability insurance permits, transportation, supplies, equipment. And I want to provide a little bit of clarification on all of these that you see here. For anyone that is not really particularly used to acquiring liability insurance, I think it's important to know that if you install on city property, you're going to need general liability insurance of a general aggregate of $2 million. I would say don't freak out about that, because it doesn't mean necessarily with that level of dollar in the aggregate that you are paying something pretty atrocious in price for your policy. Generally speaking, you can find policies for general liability insurance I've seen them in that dollar amount from $50 to $60 a year. So your grant can actually support your liability insurance and your permits that you may need to install if, say, for instance, you need to close a road to do a performance or to install an artwork or whatever the case may be. We want liability insurance and permits to be included sort of in those eligible expenses. You will definitely need liability insurance not only to install, but depending on the life of your project, you will need liability insurance throughout the life of the project. The difference with liability insurance for a public artwork that will that'll eventually become a part of the city of Chattanooga's permanent collection is that it will eventually, the artwork will be donated to the city, in which case the city and myself will become responsible for the long-term care and maintenance of that permanent built public artwork. And in which case, once it's donated to the city, you as the artist, if you've done that public art project, would no longer have to carry liability insurance, but you would rest assured the artwork would be maintained by the city for its long-term care. I want to stipulate that you necessarily can't use the eligible expenses does not qualify for permanent positions of an organization, capital improvements, which would classify as sort of buildings or construction. And a note for some of you that are salivating over the equipment that it will cover, it cannot cover major equipment. And for every medium, there's a different definition of what major would be. Use your best judgment, and we will talk about that in the grant application a little bit further down the road. You also cannot use it for seed money for starting new organizations or any type of school projects or fundraising. So it's essentially limited to what you see here on the screen, and 75% of that project budget must go directly towards supporting Chattanooga area and Thrive region entities, which was explained at the beginning, who is in that Thrive region, but essentially it's most of Tennessee, some counties of Georgia, and Alabama for you. Grant payment terms. The grants will be paid in 2 installments. Everyone that receives a grant will need to go under contract with either Public Art Chattanooga if it's a public art project that is built, or Artsfield. And the terms will be further delineated and negotiated in terms of your grant payments will be paid in 2 installments. We will have a payment schedule outlined in the grant contract with 75% of your project funding provided up front. So you do get quite a bit of upfront funding for your project once you have signed the contract. The remaining 25 will be provided at the final stages of project and submission of an interim report. We'll talk more about reporting and documentation here shortly, but just know that generally you're looking at 2 payment installments of 75 upfront with the remaining 25 towards the end. Potential project locations. So you've got City of Chattanooga public service buildings, City of Chattanooga parks and greenways, and City of Chattanooga major transportation corridors, and then private properties with public space located in Chattanooga. One of the things I want to notate about the private properties with public space located in Chattanooga is that they really have to be publicly accessible. So if you're a private business and you have a conference room that's really just for your internal board, that's not necessarily the best site for artwork to go to. We want the public at large to be able to reap the benefits of your work. And so you certainly can propose a private property, but just be conscientious about the fact that they do need to have publicly accessible space, which again would be located in Chattanooga. If you are an applicant that is desiring to partner with a private property for your artwork, know that you need to include a letter of support with the property owner, that the property owner is supporting that you will be a site should you be awarded a grant. A couple of other notes. All of the artists that are engaged in the projects must be approved by Artsfield and/or the Chattanooga Public Art Commission. The Chattanooga Public Art Commission is my boss in the fact that it is the legislative entity for the city of Chattanooga. So it's my checks and balances to make sure that that we are following everything by policy, which is great. And Artsfield has their own board as well. But essentially, artists engaged in projects can be artists outside of who's applying in the initial application, which is certainly understandable, but all of the artists will inevitably be subject to approval by both entities. If applicable, participant and audience numbers must be tracked. Again, that's not conclusive of all mediums. Not all mediums really have the ability sometimes, especially with public art. I can't tell you how many people see a certain site, see a certain artwork at a site necessarily, but if applicable, we want to be able to see sort of the return on investment from these grants. Project expected outcomes must be stated and assessed. We really would like the finished artworks to be documented, and so that again is an allowable expense in your project budget to provide for thorough documentation. When you do any sort of publicity after you're awarded the grant, we ask that you respectfully acknowledge that you received the Artswork Grant Program through our partners, Artsfield, Public Art Chattanooga, and Southeast Tennessee Development District, who made it possible. And then status reports must be submitted every 6 months where applicable. Obviously, if it's a performance that's running for a week, you're not necessarily going to do a status report, but this is much more for some of the longer term activations that'll take a little bit longer to fabricate, install, and just generally develop. So we definitely would appreciate status reports just to make sure that everything is either going to plan as outlined, or again, to be able to advise you appropriately to get over some humps and some impasses you may be at. So when you go to the grant application portal, which I believe is artspill.gosmart.org. I could be incorrect about that, and my good friend Miriam will correct me on that here momentarily, I'm sure. But when you go to the grant portal, Artspill has been wonderful to host the grant portal for submissions on their site. When you go to their site, they actually will have everything that I'm talking about here in guidelines for you to review and just get clarity on. Miriam and Sarah Tolbert, who are wonderful employees at Artsfield, also will make themselves available for any sort of application problems you may be having. But I think it's most important to note that the criteria that I'm presenting on the screen essentially tells you a lot of the information that's going to be requested in your application material. So rather than break out some of line by line by line what's going to be in the application material, I thought it more prudent to just really show you the criteria, because that'll give you a good idea of why we are requesting what we are requesting and the point value assigned to it when we're reviewing your application. So 20 points would be to provide high quality arts and cultural experience for the participants. Again, it is important to know in your application how this particular artwork will address a need presented by COVID-19. As an applicant, you would need to be able to talk about what COVID-19 has done for your profession, your business, how it's impacted you, because this grant is going to try to reinvigorate some of the lost income and opportunities that unfortunately the pandemic has afforded many of us through this very, very long experience. That you as the individual organization have the capacity to implement the project. So the project narrative, a timeline will be very much important to include in your application. The planning process is in place and has set a reasonable timetable to implement the project. I know better than anybody else when you're doing, especially public art projects, that reasonable timetables are sometimes difficult to discern, but we definitely want to see that you put the thought into steps and policies and protocols, like perhaps I need to get a permit, perhaps I need to shut down the street, perhaps I need to, so really thinking about the granular details in your budget there. The budget is reasonable to implement the project, and the communication tools with constituents and the general public are in place. So necessarily how you're planning on promoting and publicizing and driving people to your performance or exhibition. One of the things I wanted to note is you could very well in your budget, because of the fact that, say, you can't necessarily have performances where you have large scale attendees, attendance of over 50 people, you could very well decide that you are going to produce it digitally. And you could, for instance, include in your budget that is an expense that you need to prepare for your performance. And that would also be very much allowable. So I did want to think about your communication tools as it relates to also maybe driving people to that particular YouTube channel or that particular Facebook Live, or however it is that you look to broadcast your event to the masses. And then that you have a plan for documentation and assessment strategies that are adequately addressed. And those sometimes are ever evolving depending on the medium and what it is. In the case of, say, performance, you know very well that you will have to adapt because of COVID-19 and where we're at in that, but you may not have as many considerations with other mediums. But just that you are thoroughly thinking through the implementation phase. And then this particularly, I wanted to link over to the Artspill Portal. And yes, I think I was right, artspill.gosmart.org. Huzzah! There will be a link there where you can see, as I'm cursoring over there, exhibition and performance grant guidelines, and then public art grant guidelines. And those will give you sort of the down and dirty of everything that we discussed today, but then you have your lovely contact individuals there at the bottom that will provide any support you need as you go through the application process there. And then my last slide, I'm definitely wanting to add enough time for questions, would be just the upcoming dates. So we have the fall grant application period closes on October 30th. So you have more than enough time to kind of take away from this experience, review the guidelines, ask questions, start an application. You can even pause it, come back to it, which is wonderful in the grant portal. And the application period in itself will close on the 30th. We will have the grant application review period on November 4th. The grant review committee is a cross-section of individuals associated with the city, with SETD, with Artsfield, and a number of other regional arts organizations as well. So it's a great cross-section of individuals that would see sort of the greatest benefit to their local economy that this grant program would provide. And then what I think is important to know as we go through this is we will have a 1-week period where if the review committee has questions about your application in particular, maybe want some more specifics, we'll have a 1-week period. We'll extend questions to you all if need be. And then you'll provide a response. And then the week of November 16th, we will extend those grants. I will say that this is an opportunity that is seasonal. We will look to have another grant opportunity deadline, I believe this coming February. So this is not necessarily a one and done entity. We will continue to award throughout May of next year, so long as funds are available, and funding we hope will be very much appreciated and taken quicker than we probably anticipated. But we will definitely continue to have subsequent grant application periods past this one here on October 30th. And on that, I'm going to actually stop my screen share if I have a minute here.
Thank you so much, Kat. I'm just going to add a couple quick things. So, you know, the granting process can be really intimidating to a lot of people who haven't applied before. So we are here at Artsfield to help you through that process. So if you have an idea and you're not sure it fits within the guidelines, please feel free to email me and run your idea by me. I also recommend that you please, before you get started on your application, read through the guidelines. Even before you open your application portal, to make sure that your project or your proposal fits within the guidelines. And you are also welcome to submit your application as a draft review. So that's an option when you go through the grant portal, and I can give you feedback before you actually do a final submission. A question that's come up a lot is submitting more than one application. You're definitely welcome to submit more than one application. Just be mindful that you essentially will be competing against yourself, because you're going to be judged on each individual application. And also that you know, if you want to submit more than one application, just keep in mind that there are 3 application rounds. So, you know, you can submit one application in this round and another one in another round. And also please be sure to select the right grant category that you're applying for when you do go through and submit your application. So yeah, now please feel free to, we've already gotten a lot of questions in the comments, and James has been really great about answering those. But yeah, we want to open the platform up for any specific questions that anyone may have.
Yes, I first wanted to thank you, James, for being the man with the plan on the back end there in the chat. I wanted to, I'm reviewing some of the questions in the chat right now, and just wanted to sort of see some that haven't necessarily been answered. So there is some questions about the Tivoli Center and whether or not that would be a good example. The Tivoli Center, I will say, it is closed. It's kind of right now, essentially, we all know that things are in flux with how much they're open and what to what degree. As of now, things are pretty locked down for some of these other locations that are owned necessarily by the city, but they're managed by another entity, the Tivoli Foundation. I would say that if you're looking to do things outside on the sidewalk, or necessarily maybe you're looking to display works within the Tivoli, you need to build a lot of time in your timeline necessarily of when the Tivoli looks to be open, which or even Memorial Auditorium looks to be open. And I know Memorial Auditorium doesn't look to be open for the rest of the year. So those are good examples, provided that the space is actually going to be open for public accessible space. And as of this time, your guess is kind of as good as ours. And so you just have to build into your timeline. Perhaps maybe you're looking at the Tivoli Foundation, I'm sorry, the Tivoli rather, but you can also build in alternate locations. We are not necessarily requesting in your application for you to know exactly where your artwork is supposed to go. We definitely have sort of a list that we are working on right now with city entities and some other private properties with publicly accessible space to provide you sort of with some options, but it is probably more important within the application to say, you know, if you're doing a performance or you're doing something where you don't necessarily want your show to be exhibited outside, you can definitely say, you know, I don't have a place, but I know for sure that I don't want my work to be, my vinyl or my acrylic work to be outside, you know, whatever the case may be. So you don't need to necessarily be super specific on where you want that artwork to be cited. You can certainly give an idea of addresses if you have it, or what you have in mind, plus alternatives, and we will continue to work through the process with you as the applicant to narrow down what would be an appropriate place. And that information is still ever evolving with entities that are giving us particular artwork sites every day. So that's coming down the pike there. I have a question for the City of Creators exempt from applying for this grant. No, you are not exempt from applying for this grant. You do not necessarily have an advantage or anything like that. It's just very even. It's open to everyone, and you will be seen as every other application that does apply. So you are not exempt. And I mentioned that yes, you can do virtual events. We do realize that, again, you can budget for what it would take to produce virtually. So virtual events are covered. And answering for Angela Dittmar, who are the City of Creators. The City of Creators is a cohort of artists in many different disciplines who have answered an RFP as of last year to work within city government to inform capital construction projects. We have artists who are poets, we have artists who are visual artists, socially engaged activists, and they use a lot of their creative processes to engage with the community to inform public art and capital construction. So that's a larger city entity that Anna was speaking of when she asked if they were exempt from applying for the grant. And let's see what else we got. You can apply in more than one category. And we do have the grant application deadlines for this coming one is October 30th. Deadline number 2 will be February 26th. And then deadline number 3 will be May 14th. So again, if you did not see it in the chat, October 30th, February 26th, May 14th. Let's see what we got here. If the organization is applying is located in Chattanooga, do all of the artists in the exhibition house also be from or living from Chattanooga? So not necessarily. 75%, the actual exhibition has to be in Chattanooga. You can certainly employ artists as part of your project that don't live in Chattanooga, but 75% of that budget must be going to artists that are from the Thrive region, or fabricators, or videographers, things of that nature. And yes, if we need a wall or any other spaces, will you be able to provide us with a list of possible locations? Yes, we did, as I alluded to earlier, but do want to clearly state that we do have a list of artwork sites that are tentative as of this moment. We will be working to finalize those sites on Monday, and what we have done is we've created a interest form, and we will go back and make sure that those have all been properly vetted, that the city employee who said, hey, I want this thing to be at Greenway Farms, actually had authorization to submit said request that this artwork can go at Greenway Farms, or something comparable. So yes, we do have an artwork site running list, and that is actually in the grant portal. When you go to look at the application, you can also click on the link of proposed artwork sites, but they are not all, necessarily all inclusive. You are welcome to suggest sites and work it through in your own application. Yes, this seminar rather, will be recorded for public, in a public forum for you all to look at and reference later.
It will be on, it'll be available on our YouTube page, and it also gets sent out in the next invitation, so you'll see it next week.
And let's see, I want to make sure that I'm not missing any questions here. Jody, in reference to painting murals in the city, how can we get help finding out who to contact for permission to paint certain areas, such as train railings, bridges, underpasses, walls, etc.? So I will say there is a space located under a bridge in the downtown area. Does the city own it, or the train company? I will say more often than not that gets into a gray area where we're having to work with Norfolk Southern, who owns a lot of the railroads around Chattanooga, especially in the downtown vicinity. There's a railroad that goes over MLK right now, close to UTC, that is owned by Norfolk Southern. So railroads and the property below the railroad, ultimately the railroad company would have to weigh in on your mural design and your engineering plans. And that gets to be, it's not impossible, but again, when you go to look at the timeline that you have to implement the project, which would be up to 6 months to up to a year, when you factor in the review by an entity like Norfolk Southern, that's going to be a really time prohibitive review process, because they will need to review drawings and artwork, and it actually will eat into your budget quite a bit. I hope that answered your question sufficiently. We will work with, for other entities, we work heavily with the Department of Transportation for other transportation opportunities, whether it be, say, a traffic utility box that you may want to wrap. We work with CDOT on that. So we will definitely, again, when we review your applications and have that period for responses in that week, we will definitely reach out to you to further develop sort of what you have in mind before we make grant award decisions. Let's see. Can you clarify what you mentioned earlier about the work eventually needing to be donated to the city? Is that only if the work is on city property? Happy to clarify. So this is only for built public art works. Essentially what would happen is, if it is donated, if it is located on city property, and the intention is for it to be permanently sited on city property from 2 years, 1 year beyond, eventually, because it's located on city property, that work would have to fall to the city to maintain. So let's say it gets, vandalized, defaced, graffiti, whatever the case may be, it would be up to my department to make sure that the long-term care of that piece is intact. So in order to do that, that public art project would actually need to be transferred through an artwork donation form. We do this a lot, say with the City Thread alleyway activation. River City worked with us to develop that call and that artwork, and eventually for long-term care, they donated it to the city because it's in an alley where you have CDOT jurisdiction and isn't in a public space. So they donated the artwork and it's approved by city council. And essentially that just means that you as the artist would not have to be carrying insurance or be responsible for the long-term care of that work on city property. And again, that's just for permanent built public art projects. And I hope that that clarifies for you.
And I think Anne asked a question and I answered it the wrong way. I think she was actually asking about the ownership or the donation if the land is leased from the city like Sculpture Fields is, I guess. Is that correct, Anne?
Let's see, if the land is leased. That's a very good question. And because it's the leasing that I'm a little, I think it would also depend if you're looking on what exactly you are looking to do and for how long. So follow up with me, and I know you've got my email, or I'll follow up with you and we can explore that further for what you're envisioning, because I want to make sure that I'm not incorrect in this public forum. So please feel free to follow up with me. Do public artworks have to be permanent, or can they be a part of a temporary exhibition? Yes, Bags, they can be a temporary exhibition. You can do, much like we do with Mid-South, with a temporary exhibition, with the Women in Sculpture exhibition, and we do a 2-year exhibition. We would also do a 2-year temporary exhibition, which would constitute as a temporary exhibition. I believe that answers your question. What else? Did I miss anything? Does anybody have anything?
We had one more question, which was, would a short film that is presented in a public space via their website and monitors considered permanent project?
Say that for me one more time.
Would a short film that is presented in a public space via their website and I guess like digital monitors in their space be considered a permanent project?
From what you're describing, I would say no, because you would necessarily, unless you intended to have those monitors up forever and you just kept looping it, it wouldn't necessarily be considered permanent per se. You would more than likely say, these are the times, these are the dates that I plan to cite here, have the monitors do the recording display. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? And I'm super excited to see this much interest. Again, whether you contact Artspill or myself, my email address is pretty easy to remember. I'll give it to you all here now. It is the letter K and then Wright, WRIGHT at Chattanooga.gov, G-O-V. Again, K Wright at Chattanooga.gov. Certainly happy to answer questions, and I will certainly get back with Anne at Sculpture Fields, and happy to answer any other remaining questions before we turn it over to Miriam. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kat. Yeah, we had a lot of great questions. And as Kat said, you're also welcome to email me for questions, for review of your grants, for running ideas by me. So please feel free to reach out. And before we wrap up, I'm going to invite Amy Loudermilk on to do a quick announcement.
Thanks, Miriam. Just a couple of things programming wise with Artsfield. A reminder of what James announced at the very beginning, that our Arts Vote Day is Monday, October 26th. So make sure that you post on social media, and that will, with our hashtags that James provided, it's hashtag ArtsVote, hashtag ArtsVoteChaw, and hashtag early vote chaw. So we will select a couple of folks who post to social media, especially with that I voted sticker. We've got some prizes from Americans for the Arts to hand out to folks. So make sure to get those hashtags out on Monday, October 26th. Additionally, for any of the folks on today who are joining us as alumni from the Holmberg Arts Leadership Institute, we sent a survey out to our graduates. So make sure you check your email, check your spam box, and make sure you get that survey completed, because completing that will also enter you to win a prize from Americans for the Arts. So thanks so much.
Amy, I think there was some confusion about the date, and it's probably my fault. So can you just say, is it the 26th or the 27th, or, but either, just vote whenever you can, I guess early, but the Arts Vote early date is what, Amy?
The Arts Vote early date is Monday, October 26th.
Okay.
Monday, October 26th. So make sure that you're posting on that day. Artsfield is working with Arts Forward, so you can go to the Arts Forward page and see some of the graphics that that they've put up for us to help us with this event that Mayor Burke has asked us to participate in. So. And
I want to add, see, Jocelyn said, is this on Artsfield social media? Are you speaking about the Arts Vote early, or this session like on YouTube, or can you just clarify that? Yeah, the votes early, yes. It is on our social media. We've shared it through email. It's in our e-newsletter, and we also will be sharing it all next week, just to generate people getting to the polls. Someone else asked, when will the leadership program happen again? We're doing a remix and reevaluation of it right now, and our hope is that we will be able to kick it off in the spring. But the feedback that you all give us who've participated in our survey is very beneficial to us, and will help us to make sure that the Holmberg Institute is what we need right now in 2020 in the arts sector, as an arts sector. So the information, we're so appreciative for your feedback on the surveys. Any final questions? And Emily, thank you, has shared the Art Actions Fund's website that has information specific to Tennessee about early vote and get out the vote. It also will link you to some wonderful graphics that you can use and share as well. All right, so if there are no further questions, it's been wonderful seeing everyone. Thank you. We're so excited to be able to offer this new grant, and y'all, come on, wear us out, send those applications in, and we're gonna give away this money until it completely runs out, and I can't wait to see all of the amazing things that you all do. So thank you for joining with us today, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.